She had nothing on. Absolutely nothing. In a stranger's home. Not in a sensual way, not posed to allure. Just laid out across a battered couch in a cold, drafty studio above Holland Park. The kind of place where the walls whispered of madness and genius in equal measure. Sue Tilley had never done anything like this before. A benefits supervisor by day, she was more used to fluorescent lights and paperwork than the quiet, unsettling gaze of one of Britain's most revered and unrelenting painters. But now her full, heavy body was exposed under the faded skylight, her limbs spilling over worn cushions, every curve surrendered to the air. For this strange, surreal job, she earned £33 a day. Not much, but enough to keep coming back, to lie still for hours while Freud studied her, like a puzzle he was determined to solve. One brushstroke at a time. Lucian Freud didn't say much. He stood at a distance, staring. Not with lust, not with pity, but with a painter's precision. He circled her slowly, brush in hand, as if measuring her flesh against the weight of history, against centuries of beauty standards he never cared for. To him, Sue wasn't just a woman. She was a landscape. Her belly, her thighs, the weight of her existence, these weren't flaws. They were facts. And Freud loved facts more than fantasy. His brush didn't glide. It carved, scraped, pressed thick oil paint onto canvas like he was sculpting the truth out of skin. She felt ridiculous at first, exposed, almost humiliated. But there was something in his silence that told her, this isn't about shame. This is about being seen. Lucian Freud wasn't just a painter. He was a chronicler of human vulnerability. The years had hollowed his face, giving him the look of someone who had seen too much and been too involved in his own paintings to care about the world beyond the canvas. His hands were still steady though, and when he gripped a brush, the canvas trembled beneath it. He didn't simply depict bodies, he rendered them with layers of thick oil paint. Each stroke a violent, truthful assertion of flesh. For Freud, it was never about idealizing the human form. It was about truth, no matter how raw or uncomfortable that truth might be. It was in this environment, amidst chaos and paint-splattered floors, that Sue Tilley arrived. She was an unlikely muse. A woman in her 40s, not the thin, angular beauty often favored by artists. She wasn't known for posing or being glamorous. In fact, she was hardly what anyone would call a model. By night, she found herself drifting in the world of underground clubs and avant-garde art, often at the side of Lee Bowery, a larger-than-life performance artist who had already sat for Freud. It was Lee who suggested Sue might be the next to pose for the legendary painter. Sue wasn't convinced at first. She thought it was a joke. Freud asking her, a middle-aged woman with a body that defied the beauty standards of the day, to pose for him? But when she finally entered his studio, she saw something in his eyes, a quiet intensity that wasn't interested in her body as a subject of desire or admiration. He saw it as something else, a landscape, raw and uncompromising. The couch she lay on was old and sagging, the room chilled by the draft from the cracked windows. But Sue didn't mind. What was expected of her was simple: to lie still, to become a subject for Freud to paint. But nothing about the experience was simple. Freud didn't speak much. He would occasionally glance at her, measuring the way the light fell on her body, the way the shadow shifted as her muscles relaxed. There was no flattery in his gaze, no pretense. He saw the truth, and he began to paint it. There was no quick sketching, no soft, clean strokes. This was Lucian Freud's technique, thick layers of paint applied with purpose. The brush didn't glide, It pushed and scraped, pulling at the canvas with an almost sculptural touch. Freud was more than a painter. He was a man carving truth out of the material before him. Sue's body wasn't flattened or made delicate. Freud didn't want her to be idealized or romanticized. He painted her with truth, heavy, soft, alive. The curves of her belly were rendered with rough, layered strokes. The sag of her arms captured in full, thick paint. The paint, as it built up, felt like a new skin being formed. He didn't paint her to please or to seduce. He painted her to expose what was so often hidden. As the sessions wore on, the painting grew. Each stroke was like a revelation, layer upon layer of texture, building up the body in front of him. Freud worked slowly, obsessively, as though every part of Sue's form had to be explored, examined, and understood. Her flesh wasn't flattened into an ideal, it was rendered in all its rawness, the soft folds of her stomach captured in meticulous detail, the sag of her arms tenderly painted with compassion, not pity. Each brushstroke added weight and substance, capturing not just the figure, but the sensation of existing in a body. Sue's face, relaxed in a quiet slumber, offered a stark contrast to the physicality of the rest of the canvas. While her body sprawled beneath the brush, its form uncontained and vulnerable, her face was calm, almost serene. Yet it too was painted with Freud's meticulous eye for detail, her cheeks rounded, her skin thick with age and experience. There was no beauty in the conventional sense, no attempt to flatter or soften the imperfections of her features. Instead, Freud had captured her truth. And it was in this that the painting became something extraordinary. Weeks turned into months. The sessions dragged on as Freud worked with an almost religious intensity, his eyes squinting at the layers of paint as if he were seeing through them, peeling back layers of truth. Sometimes, Sue would drift off to sleep during the long hours. She would wake to find him still at work, the paint still fresh on the canvas, the brush still moving in long, deliberate strokes. After nearly a year of work, the portrait was complete. It was 7 feet wide, monumental. It was not a body in any conventional sense. It was a landscape of flesh. Sue's body, in all its sprawling beauty, was the subject, but it was more than just a figure to be admired. It was an assertion, an audacious declaration of presence. Lucian Freud, for all his reclusiveness, had painted something that the world was not prepared for. He didn't paint to please, he painted to show. And Sue Tilley wasn't just a model in that painting. She was a witness. When the portrait was first revealed to the public, the critics recoiled. They had never seen anything like it. Sue Tilley was not the type of woman people were accustomed to seeing in the art world, especially not in such an unapologetic, unvarnished form. Her body was not slim or ideal. She wasn't softened or smoothed by the brush. Freud had painted her as she was, with every fold of skin and every stretch of muscle exposed. It was uncomfortable, it was confronting. Some critics called it grotesque, others brave. But underneath the judgment, there was one universal truth. This was no ordinary portrait. This was a masterpiece, one that demanded to be seen, whether the viewer was ready or not. Sue? She took it in stride. She laughed when asked about it. "It's just a painting," she said. "It's not sexy, it's not glamorous, it's just me." Years passed, and Lucian Freud's fame grew. His work sold for millions. But Sue never became the kind of muse others might have expected. She went back to her life, her job, her friends, her own unapologetic existence. She lived quietly, not reveling in the celebrity of the painting, but embracing the quiet power that came with being seen, truly seen. Then came the night that changed everything. In May of 2008, Christie's auction house in New York held an event that would shake the art world to its core. At lot 14 was Benefits Supervisor Sleeping. The room was filled with billionaires, collectors, and high society art dealers. Everyone was watching. Everyone knew what was coming. The bidding began. 10 million, 15 million, 20 million. The numbers climbed at a dizzying rate until, at last, the gavel came down. $30 million sold. It was the highest price ever paid for a living artist's work. A painting of a sleeping woman from a working-class background, her flesh bared and unflinching. The world gasped. The art world had its new darling, its new icon. And yet, Sue Tilley, she was back in her flat, watching it all unfold on television, in her pajamas. She didn't want the attention, nor did she seek it. But the world had already seen her, not as an object, not as a subject of ridicule, but as a witness to the truth of her own body. "I didn't make a penny from the auction," she said later. "But I got a good story." Lucian Freud died in 2011. His brushes set down for the last time. But Benefits Supervisor Sleeping, the portrait of Sue Tilley, the monumental woman who dared to be seen in all her glory, remains a testament to what Freud believed about art, about life, and so the painting remains. Not just an artwork, but a provocation, an invitation to look deeper, to question what is hidden, to confront what is real.